The charity gala at the Sovereign Grand Ballroom. For me, it was meant to be the culmination of years. 3 grueling years of building my nonprofit, dedicated to underprivileged youth, had finally brought us to this point, our first major fundraiser. 200 guests filled the elegant space, champagne flutes shimmering under the crystal chandeliers. My name was everywhere, on every program, banner, every piece of promotional material. But Chloe? She wasn't on the guest list. My older sister, for years my senior, Chloe had spent our entire childhood perfecting a particularly cruel brand of humor aimed squarely at me. Our parents often dismissed it as sibling rivalry, but her actions crossed lines that felt fundamentally wrong. She'd lock me in closets during thunderstorms, knowing my terror of the dark. She once shredded my college acceptance letter, then told me it simply hadn't arrived. My first serious relationship? Undermined by her lies to my boyfriend about me seeing someone else. But her favorite weapon, the one she'd wielded since I was 12, was my shellfish allergy. That's when we discovered even trace amounts of crab, shrimp, or lobster could send my body into anaphylactic shock. While most people would react with concern, Chloe saw it as my ultimate vulnerability, a weakness to exploit whenever she wanted to assert dominance. I remembered her waving shrimp cocktail in my face at family dinners, or accidentally ordering dishes with hidden shellfish when we ate out, claiming she'd forgotten about my condition. Tonight, she'd somehow managed to get herself added to the guest list at the last minute. The moment she entered, I spotted her. She wore a designer gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her husband, Ethan, trailing uncomfortably behind her in a tailored suit. "There's my brilliant baby sister," Chloe announced, her voice carrying across the room, causing nearby guests to turn. She swept towards me, arms open wide, her expensive perfume reaching me seconds before she did. "I couldn't possibly miss your big night. Family supports family, right?" The irony of those words, coming from her, made my stomach clench. I forced a smile, letting her give me a brief hug while keeping my body rigid. Donors were watching, and I couldn't afford to cause a scene. This evening meant too much to the kids relying on our programs. "I wasn't expecting you," I said quietly, stepping back from her embrace. "The guest list closed 2 weeks ago." She waved a dismissive hand, diamonds flashing on her wrist. "Oh, I made a generous last-minute donation. They were happy to accommodate me." Her eyes scanned the room, a clear appraisal. "Quite the turnout. You must be so proud of yourself." Something in her tone suggested the exact opposite. Before I could respond, one of our board members approached, ready to introduce me to a major potential donor. I excused myself, grateful for the escape, leaving Chloe to explore the venue with Ethan silently in her wake. The man I was introduced to, Arthur Sterling, commanded attention without saying a word. He stood well over 6 feet tall, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his charcoal suit fitting as if it had been sewn directly onto his athletic frame. His handshake was firm, brief, his gray eyes sharp and assessing. "Miss Thorne," he said, his deep voice cutting through the ambient noise of the gala. "I've been reading about your work with at-risk teenagers. The mentorship program you developed has impressive outcomes." We talked for 20 minutes about funding models, expansion possibilities, and his own foundation's focus. Arthur Sterling, it turned out, was the CEO of Sterling Global Industries, a multinational corporation with revenues exceeding $8 billion annually. His presence at my modest fundraiser seemed surreal. Yet, he engaged with genuine interest, asking detailed questions about our programs and their impact metrics. "I'd like to discuss a potential partnership," he said, handing me his business card. "My foundation has been looking for innovative youth programs to support. Your organization fits exactly what we're seeking." Before I could fully process what that might mean, the catering manager appeared at my elbow. "Miss Thorne, we're ready to begin serving dinner. Would you like to say a few words before the meal?" I excused myself from Arthur and made my way to the small stage area. The microphone squealed briefly before I adjusted it, looking out at the crowd of supporters who had made this evening possible. My prepared remarks felt utterly inadequate for the gratitude flooding through me. These people believed in our mission enough to invest their time and money. Halfway through my speech, I noticed Chloe standing near the kitchen entrance, speaking animatedly with one of the catering staff. The server nodded repeatedly, writing something on her notepad. An unease prickled along my spine, but I pushed it aside. Surely, even Chloe wouldn't sabotage a charity event. Dinner service began as I finished speaking. Guests returned to their assigned tables, and I found my seat at the head table alongside board members and major donors. Arthur had been placed 2 seats to my left, and we continued our conversation about potential collaboration. The first course arrived, a mixed green salad with vinaigrette. Everything seemed perfect. The soup course came next. Servers placed bowls of what appeared to be creamy potato soup in front of each guest. The rich aroma drifted up from my bowl, and I reached for my spoon, listening to Arthur describe his foundation's application process. Wait. A hand shot across the table, grabbing my wrist before the spoon reached my lips. Arthur's expression had transformed from relaxed interest to sharp alarm. Don't eat that. I froze. Confused by the sudden intervention, I noticed other guests around us had already begun eating their soup, murmuring appreciation for the flavor. Arthur released my wrist and leaned closer to my bowl, inhaling carefully. There's shellfish in this, he stated flatly. Crab, if I'm identifying the scent correctly. I have the same allergy. My heart plummeted. I set down my spoon with a hand that suddenly trembled. That's impossible. I personally reviewed the entire menu with the catering company. Every single dish was supposed to be shellfish-free because of my allergy. They confirmed it twice. Arthur was already signaling for the catering manager, his demeanor shifting into what I imagined was his boardroom mode, calm but absolutely authoritative. When the flustered manager arrived, Arthur gestured to my untouched bowl. This soup contains crab. Miss Thorne specified a completely shellfish-free menu. How did this happen? The manager's face went pale. That's impossible. All our soups tonight were potato-based. Let me check with the kitchen immediately. She hurried away, and I sat frozen, trying to process what had almost happened. If Arthur hadn't stopped me, if I'd swallowed even one spoonful, I'd be in anaphylactic shock within minutes. The EpiPen in my clutch purse would buy me time, but I'd still need emergency medical intervention. The gala, my big night, would be transformed into a medical crisis. Across the ballroom, Chloe sat at her table, watching our interaction with an expression I couldn't quite read. But something about her posture, too still, too focused, made suspicion crystallize into certainty. The catering manager returned, looking stricken, followed by the head chef, still in his whites. Miss Thorne, I'm so sorry. There was a last-minute substitution. A woman claiming to be your sister told our staff that you changed your mind about the soup course. She said you wanted our signature crab bisque instead of the potato soup, because it was more impressive for the donors. Heat flooded my face, followed immediately by an ice-cold fury. My sister told you this? She was very insistent, the chef added, wringing his hands. She said she'd just spoken with you and that you were too busy to come tell us yourself. She even showed us confirmation of the donation she'd made to get added to tonight's guest list, saying it proved she was invested in making the event successful. We had no reason to doubt her. Arthur leaned forward, his expression hardening. What time did this woman approach you? The chef glanced at his watch. About 40 minutes ago. Maybe 6:45. She caught me right as we were plating the salad course. Said it was urgent, that Miss Thorne would be mortified if we served such a plain soup to these important guests. I felt my hands begin to shake. 40 minutes ago, I'd been on stage giving my welcome speech. Chloe had been standing near the kitchen entrance, talking to the catering staff. That hadn't been a coincidence, or a casual conversation. She had deliberately waited until I was occupied and unable to intervene. Did she mention anything else? Arthur pressed. Any other details about the substitution? The catering manager pulled out her phone, scrolling through notes. She specifically requested that the crab bisque be served to table 1, seat 3, Miss Thorne's assigned seat. She said the rest of the guests could have their option, but that Miss Thorne definitely wanted the bisque. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm so sorry. She seemed so genuine, so concerned about making the event perfect for her sister. A board member who'd been listening nearby spoke up. I saw her near the kitchen earlier. She was very animated, kept pointing toward the head table. I thought she was just being an enthusiastic family member. Arthur's jaw clenched. She was making certain the contaminated dish would reach exactly the right person. This wasn't careless. It was calculated. The full scope of Chloe's planning hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't just substituted the soup on impulse. She'd researched the venue, identified the catering company, learned their signature dishes, and timed her intervention precisely. She'd made sure I would be the one, the only one, to receive the potentially deadly allergen. There's more, the chef added reluctantly. She asked specifically about the crab content. Wanted to know if we used real crab or imitation. When I told her we only use fresh Maryland blue crab in our bisque, she seemed pleased. Said that was exactly what her sister deserved. Those words, what her sister deserved, carried an ominous weight. This wasn't about upgrading the menu or making the gala more impressive. Chloe had chosen the most potent allergen available, ensuring maximum harm if I consumed even a spoonful. My mind flashed back to an incident from years ago. I'd been hospitalized after accidentally eating food prepared on the same cutting board as shrimp. The reaction had been severe, throat closing, blood pressure dropping, my entire body going into shock. Chloe had visited me in the hospital, and instead of showing concern, she'd laughed, called me weak for having such a dramatic reaction to a little seafood. Our mother had scolded her, but the damage was done. She'd seen my vulnerability and catalogued it for future use. Arthur's jaw tightened. Where is this sister now? I didn't need to look. I could feel Chloe's presence like a weight across the room. When I finally turned toward her table, she was smiling, that same superior smirk she'd worn countless times throughout our childhood. The one she'd use whenever she'd successfully tormented me. She raised her wineglass in a mock toast. Excuse me, I said to Arthur, standing abruptly. My chair scraped against the floor, drawing attention from nearby tables. I didn't care anymore about maintaining perfect composure. I walked straight toward Chloe's table, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She stood as I approached, her smile widening. Everything all right, little sister? You look upset. You tried to harm me, the words came out low but clear. Several guests at surrounding tables turned to stare. Chloe laughed, the sound light and dismissive. Harm? How dramatic. I simply upgraded the soup course. Your guests deserve better than plain potato soup at a charity gala. You should be thanking me for improving your menu. You know I'm deadly allergic to shellfish, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. You've known since we were kids. You told the caterers to serve crab bisque specifically because you wanted me to have a severe allergic reaction. She leaned in closer, her smile never wavering. Prove it. I made a generous donation to enhance the evening. If you're so paranoid about your silly allergy, maybe you should have been more careful about checking your food. Ethan shifted uncomfortably behind her. Chloe, maybe we should go. This isn't right. She snapped at him without turning around, her attention fixed on me. I'm so tired of everything revolving around your supposed allergy. It's probably not even real. You've always been such an attention seeker, making everyone cater to your special needs. I did everyone a favor by serving decent food for once. The ballroom had gone quiet around us. I was dimly aware of guests watching, of Arthur standing a few feet away, of my board members looking horrified, but my focus narrowed to Chloe's self-satisfied expression. Years of psychological harm and emotional cruelty crystallized into this single moment. "You're right about one thing," I said quietly. "I can't prove you did this deliberately, but you and I both know the truth." Arthur stepped forward, his phone already in his hand. "Actually, I believe we can prove quite a bit. This venue has security cameras throughout, including in the kitchen service areas. I'm calling 911 right now to report an attempted assault." Chloe's smile finally faltered. "That's ridiculous." "You can't seriously." "I'm Arthur Sterling," he interrupted, his tone chilling. "No argument. My legal team is already on standby. We'll be requesting all security footage from this evening, along with statements from every catering staff member you spoke to. If you attempted to cause Miss Thorne harm through deliberate contamination of her food, that constitutes assault at minimum, possibly a far more serious charge given the severity of her allergy." The color drained from Chloe's face. Around us, guests murmured, their earlier enjoyment of the gala replaced by shocked attention. "This is insane," Chloe sputtered. "I'm her sister. I would never actually cause her such harm." "It was just what?" Arthur's gray eyes were cold as steel. "Just a joke? Just a prank? Anaphylactic shock isn't funny. It's life-threatening. If Miss Thorne had consumed even a small amount of that soup, she could have experienced a fatal reaction within minutes." As if on cue, 2 police officers entered through the main ballroom doors. Hotel security must have called them the moment the catering manager reported the incident. They approached our group with professional calm, taking in the scene. Arthur spoke first, his authoritative presence immediately establishing credibility. "Officers, I'm Arthur Sterling. I'd like to report an attempted assault. This woman deliberately contaminated Miss Thorne's food with an allergen that could have caused her death." One officer began taking notes while the other asked to speak with the catering staff. Chloe's expression cycled through denial, anger, and finally fear as the reality of the situation sank in. Her husband, Ethan, had already stepped back, literally distancing himself from her actions. "I want my lawyer," Chloe said, her voice high and tight. "I'm not saying anything without my lawyer present." The officer nodded. "That's your right, ma'am, but we'll need you to come down to the station for questioning." As they led her toward the exit, Chloe shot me a look of pure venom. "You'll regret this. Do you have any idea what this will do to our family? Eleanor and Richard will never forgive you for having me arrested." "They might surprise you," I said quietly. "Once they hear what you tried to do." The officers escorted her out, Ethan trailing behind them, looking shell-shocked. The ballroom erupted in conversation the moment they disappeared. I stood frozen in place, the adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation suddenly draining away, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Arthur gently touched my elbow. "You should sit down. Even though you didn't consume the allergen, your body is processing a significant stress response." I let him guide me to a quiet corner away from the curious stares and whispered speculation. A server brought water, and I sipped it slowly, trying to steady my breathing. The gala I'd worked so hard to perfect had imploded spectacularly. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. The water glass clinked against my teeth as I tried to drink. Arthur noticed and quietly removed it from my grip, setting it on the nearby table. He didn't hover or offer empty platitudes. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Sarah, I need you to clear my morning schedule," he said to someone on the other end. "Something's come up that requires my immediate attention." A pause. "No, nothing with the company. Personal matter. I'll fill you in tomorrow." He ended the call and focused back on me. "My assistant will reschedule my breakfast meeting. You shouldn't have to manage this situation alone." "You barely know me," I managed to say. "This isn't your problem." Someone just tried to cause you serious harm at your own charity event, Arthur replied evenly. And I happen to be the person who prevented it. That makes it my concern until we ensure you're safe and this situation is properly handled. A board member approached tentatively. The guests are asking what they should do. Should we continue with dinner or cancel the meal service? Please apologize to everyone, I decided. And explain there's been a serious safety incident. Tell them we'll be rescheduling this event within the next month, and their tickets will transfer automatically. The board member nodded and hurried off to make the announcement. I watched guests begin gathering their belongings, many casting sympathetic glances in my direction. Years of work building relationships with these donors, and now they'd remember this evening as the night my sister tried to cause me harm. They'll come back, Arthur said, reading my thoughts. You handled this with remarkable composure. That matters more than perfect execution of a party. A younger woman in her 30s approached us, introducing herself as Detective Emily Davies. She had just arrived to take over the investigation from the responding officers. Her demeanor was professional but kind, and she settled into a chair across from me with a notepad ready. Miss Thorne, I know this has been traumatic, but I need to ask you some questions while the details are fresh. Can you walk me through your relationship with your sister? I took a breath and began talking. Once I started, everything poured out. Childhood incidents, the escalating cruelty, the previous times Chloe had used my allergy against me. I told her about the shrimp cocktail incidents, the deliberate ordering of shellfish dishes, the hospital visit where Chloe had mocked my condition. Detective Davies' expression grew more serious with each detail. Did you ever file police reports about any of these incidents? No, I admitted. They seemed like family issues, not criminal matters. My parents always said siblings fight, that Chloe would grow out of it. Attempting to cause anaphylactic shock isn't a sibling fight, the detective said firmly. It's assault. Based on what you're describing, there's a clear pattern of escalating harassment and harmful acts. Arthur interjected. I can have my legal team compile documentation of similar cases and their outcomes. This level of premeditation combined with knowledge of a potentially fatal medical condition, there's substantial precedent for serious charges. Detective Davies nodded appreciatively. That would be helpful, Mr. Sterling. Miss Thorne, I'm also going to recommend you document everything you remember about your sister's past behavior. Dates, witnesses, any evidence you might have, text messages, emails, anything that shows this pattern of targeting you. The weight of it all pressed down on me. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about years of harm I'd minimized and excused because we shared DNA. Chloe hadn't suddenly decided to hurt me. She'd been hurting me all along, and I'd let her. There are emails, I said slowly. After I started this nonprofit, she sent me messages saying I was wasting my time, that I'd fail. She told her extended family I was embezzling donations, which wasn't true, but it damaged some relationships. I saved everything because I was documenting it for my therapist. Detective Davies' eyes lit up. Your therapist can testify about the emotional impact of this ongoing harassment. Miss Thorne, I want you to understand something. What happened tonight wasn't an isolated incident. It was a culmination of systematic emotional and physical danger. The district attorney is going to want to pursue this aggressively. Over the next hour, Detective Davies interviewed catering staff, reviewed the security footage, and photographed the contaminated soup that had been collected as evidence. The video was damning. It showed Chloe approaching the catering manager with a confident stride, gesturing emphatically as she spoke. Her body language conveyed authority and urgency, manipulating the staff into believing she represented my wishes. Another camera angle showed her watching as servers prepared the head table, her gaze tracking the placement of each dish. When the crab bisque was set at my seat, she'd smiled. Actually smiled, before returning to her own table to wait for the show. Arthur shook his head. You have nothing to apologize for. Your sister attempted to seriously harm you, potentially even take your life. The fact that it happened at a charity gala doesn't make her actions any less criminal. The evidence was damning. Multiple cameras had captured Chloe speaking with the catering manager, her animated gestures and insistent body language clearly visible. Staff members confirmed she claimed to be delivering a message from me about changing the soup course. The head chef produced the paperwork showing Chloe's initial donation to secure her spot on the guest list. One server even reported that Chloe had specifically asked which seat was mine, watching as they placed the soup in front of my spot at the head table. Arthur stayed beside me through the entire process, occasionally asking pointed questions that the investigators hadn't considered. His business acumen translated surprisingly well to criminal investigation. He understood how to establish timeline, motive, and opportunity. The donation amount, he noted to Detective Davies, matches what she paid to get onto the guest list. She planned this from the moment she decided to attend. The money bought her access and credibility with the staff. The detective flipped through the paperwork. "You're right. This shows planning. She came here knowing exactly what she intended to do, paid her way in, then used that same financial gesture as proof she had the host's best interests at heart." A horrible thought occurred to me. She asked about my schedule this week. Called me 3 days ago wanting to know if I was busy this weekend. I told her about the gala because I was excited, and she seemed interested for once. She asked what hotel, what time, even what I was serving. She was gathering intelligence, Arthur said grimly, treating this like a military operation. My phone buzzed with a call from my mother, Eleanor. I stared at the screen, not sure I could handle that conversation yet. Arthur noticed my hesitation. "You don't have to answer right now," he said. "Take time to process what happened before dealing with family reactions." But I knew my parents needed to hear the truth from me, not from Ethan's panicked phone call or a police notification. I answered, bracing myself. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" Eleanor's voice was strained. "Ethan just called saying Chloe's been arrested. He's not making sense. Something about soup and allergies and police." I explained everything as calmly as possible, though my voice shook on certain details. Eleanor went silent for a long moment after I finished. "She wouldn't," my mom finally said, but her conviction sounded hollow. "Chloe can be thoughtless, but she'd never actually try to harm you. There must be a misunderstanding." My father, Richard's voice, came through the background, apparently having grabbed the phone. "Where are you right now? Are you safe?" "I'm at the hotel. The police are still here. And Arthur Sterling, he's a donor who stopped me from eating the soup. He's making sure everything is documented properly." "We're coming there," Richard stated. "Give us 20 minutes." They arrived in 15, both looking aged by worry and confusion. Eleanor's makeup was smudged from crying, and Richard's shirt was partially untucked like he'd dressed in a hurry. Detective Davies was still reviewing evidence with hotel security when my parents entered the ballroom. Eleanor rushed over and pulled me into a tight hug. "Thank God you're all right." When Ethan said hospital, an allergic reaction, I thought she couldn't finish the sentence. "I didn't need it," I assured her. Arthur recognized the smell before I took a bite. Richard shook Arthur's hand with obvious gratitude. "Thank you for protecting our daughter." "If you hadn't been there," he stopped, overcome by the implications. "I have the same allergy," Arthur explained. I recognized the scent immediately. Your daughter was seconds away from a potentially fatal reaction. Eleanor's face crumpled. But why would Chloe do this? She's made comments before, yes, but to actually tamper with your food, Detective Davies approached with her notepad. Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, I'd like to ask you some questions about your daughter's relationship, particularly any previous incidents involving Miss Chloe Thorne and food allergies. They settled into chairs, and I listened as my parents recounted memories I'd partially suppressed. The time Chloe deliberately smeared shrimp butter on my keyboard when I was 16. The birthday dinner where she'd ordered a shellfish tower despite knowing I couldn't be near it. The family vacation where she'd hidden crab in my suitcase, causing me to break out in hives from the residual proteins. We thought it was sibling rivalry, Eleanor said miserably. We made her apologize each time, grounded her, sent her to counseling. But she always said she was just joking, that she didn't mean any real harm. Tonight wasn't a joke, Detective Davies said gently. Tonight, she researched how to deliver a specific allergen directly to your daughter, paid money to ensure it happened, and watched while the contaminated dish was served. That's premeditated assault. Richard buried his face in his hands. I should have seen this coming. The incidents were escalating, getting more dangerous. I just kept hoping she'd mature, that she'd outgrow the jealousy. Jealousy of what? I asked. The question had haunted me for years. Chloe had always been the successful one, better grades, better job, married first, living in a bigger house. Eleanor and Richard exchanged a loaded glance. Finally, Eleanor spoke. You've always been kind, sweetheart. People are drawn to you because you genuinely care about them. Chloe could never understand that. She thought success meant status and money, but she saw how people responded to you with real affection, not just professional courtesy. It ate at her. The pieces clicked into place. Chloe hadn't been threatened by my accomplishments. She'd been threatened by my relationships. Tonight's gala, filled with donors who genuinely believed in my mission and respected me as a person, must have been unbearable for her to witness. She watched me give that speech, I said slowly. Saw 200 people listening, supporting this work. She couldn't stand it. Arthur nodded. So, she tried to destroy the evening and remove you from the equation simultaneously. Classic narcissistic behavior when confronted with someone else's genuine success. The police recommended I obtain a restraining order. Arthur's legal team, which apparently operated with terrifying efficiency, had already begun compiling documentation of Chloe's history of harmful behavior. I'd never formally reported her actions before, always telling myself it was just sibling conflict, that families dealt with these things privately. That denial had nearly cost me my life. The gala guests had gradually departed, most offering words of support and relief that I was unharmed. Several major donors privately told me this incident had actually increased their commitment to our cause. They admired how I'd handled the dangerous situation with grace and strength. Arthur's foundation pledged a 7-figure grant to expand our program citywide. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. Chloe's lawyer tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, a miscommunication between sisters, but the security footage, staff statements, and her own words to me in front of witnesses painted a clear picture of deliberate intent to cause harm. She'd researched the catering company, made a sizable donation to gain their trust, and specifically requested the most dangerous shellfish for someone with my allergy profile. The district attorney charged her with attempted assault with a deadly weapon, the contaminated food being classified as the weapon. Given the premeditation involved and the potentially fatal consequences, they pursued the case aggressively. Arthur's legal team provided resources and expert witnesses who testified about the severity of shellfish allergies and the likelihood of fatal anaphylaxis. Chloe pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of reckless endangerment. She received 3 years of probation, mandatory anger management counseling, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of me. The judge's comments during sentencing were scathing, noting that family relationships didn't excuse criminal behavior and that Chloe had betrayed the fundamental trust that should exist between siblings. My parents struggled with the outcome. Eleanor wanted to believe Chloe's claims that she'd never meant for me to actually eat the soup, that she'd planned to stop me at the last moment. Richard was less forgiving, recognizing the pattern of harmful acts that had existed for years. Their marriage strained under the weight of choosing between daughters, though eventually they agreed that supporting Chloe's criminal behavior would have been wrong. The nonprofit flourished beyond my wildest projections. Arthur's foundation grant allowed us to triple our mentorship programs and expand into 3 additional cities. He joined our board of directors, bringing both financial resources and business expertise that transformed our operational efficiency. His intervention that night, recognizing the contaminated soup, calling the police, providing legal support, had saved my life and inadvertently strengthened our organization's future. I eventually learned more about Arthur's own history with shellfish allergies. His younger brother had died at age 16 from anaphylactic shock after a restaurant server didn't take his allergies seriously. That tragedy had shaped Arthur's immediate recognition of the danger I'd faced and his unwavering commitment to ensuring Chloe faced consequences. He understood that dismissing food allergies as trivial inconveniences could have fatal results. Chloe and I never reconciled. The restraining order remained in effect, and I had no desire to reconnect with someone who'd tried to cause me fatal harm. She'd sent a letter through her lawyer 6 months after sentencing, claiming she'd only wanted to embarrass me, to prove my allergy wasn't as serious as I claimed. The letter read like another attempt at manipulation rather than genuine remorse. I filed it away without responding. My relationship with my parents improved slowly. They'd enabled Chloe's behavior for years, and acknowledging their role in allowing her cruelty to escalate required difficult conversations and family therapy. But they eventually understood that protecting one child's feelings couldn't come at the cost of another child's safety. We built something more honest, even if it lacked the artificial harmony they tried to maintain when we were younger. The charity gala became an annual event, growing larger and more successful each year. We always served a completely allergen-free menu, and I always told the story of how Arthur's quick thinking had prevented a tragedy. It reminded people that food allergies weren't inconveniences or attention-seeking behavior. They were serious medical conditions requiring respect and caution. 5 years after that night, I stood in the same ballroom preparing for our 5th annual gala. The organization now served over 3,000 young people across 8 cities. Arthur's foundation had expanded their partnership, and he'd become not just a board member, but a trusted friend. The scared, shaky woman who had nearly been poisoned had transformed into a confident executive director running a multi-million-dollar nonprofit. I thought about Chloe sometimes, wondered if she'd truly changed during her probation, or if she still blamed me for the consequences of her own actions. But mostly, I focused forward on the lives we were changing and the future we were building. Her attempt to destroy me had instead revealed my strength and attracted allies I'd never have found otherwise. The guests began arriving for the gala, filling the ballroom with laughter and conversation. I greeted donors and board members, accepted congratulations on our program outcomes, and prepared to give my opening remarks. No family drama would interrupt this evening. No hidden dangers lurked in the catering. Just the satisfaction of work well done, and the knowledge that I'd survived something meant to destroy me. Sometimes the best response isn't retaliation. It's building a life so successful, so meaningful, that the person who tried to harm you becomes irrelevant. Chloe had wanted to embarrass me, to prove I was weak and seeking attention. Instead, she'd proven her own cruelty, while giving me the opportunity to demonstrate resilience. The lights dimmed for my opening speech. I stepped up to the microphone, looking out at hundreds of supporters who believed in our mission. My voice was steady as I welcomed them, thanked them for their commitment, and shared stories of the young people whose lives had been transformed by their generosity. Chloe's empty seat at a table she'd never occupy again meant nothing compared to the full room of people who saw me as strong, capable, and worth supporting. That was the real victory. Have you ever had a moment where someone tried to tear you down, only to inadvertently push you to achieve something greater?